right, so welcome everybody. Just recording this for you know our for the future for to share this with other folks. But welcome to Catch Me If I Slip, remembering names without shame. We're talking a lot about shame today, and we're using names as a vector to talk about it. And so, uh, well, mainly because the skills and the tips that we're going to talk about today are relevant to more than just names and what we are talking about specifically as an example. So, uh, there we go. So my name is Yasis. He and his, the DEI Community Engagement Coordinator for the DEI office at the College of Natural Science. If you have something that you're specifically trying to learn today, if you're feeling so inclined, please put it in the chat, and then I'll connect back with you if we don't hit that topic. It's also a fun way for me to understand what the needs of the community are. So put it in the chat. I'm happy to come and chat with you at the end. So we're like I said, we're talking about a lot about shame today, using names as a vector. We'll talk a little bit about what shame is, some examples, how to navigate mistakes as we make without shame, and then at the end, if there's time, we can do some questions and answers. So obviously, we are always open for consultation and things like that. Just another person to bounce ideas off of. But we'll get started with today's conversation. But as we start, I want to give you a personal example here and why names and shame are important to me. So in 2014, I was a student mentor for a summer leadership camp that we did at my undergrad, and I had a staff member who was a mentor of mine. He's not in this group here. His name is Liston, and we had worked together for years at that point. Pretty close. Someone that I looked up to, someone that I trusted. And one day in this camp, which was like a week long, in front of 100 other students, used the wrong name. He said my name was Yusuf, not Yassis. He, used me as an example several times, and he called me Yusuf many times. And immediately the group of students I was with, they were my team. We were together for 7 days. They looked at each other, looked at me, and was like, "Did you just hear what he said? Uh, you good?" And several other people that were not in our group also approached me, and my reaction was, instead of um, you know talking about how I felt, I just made an excuse for him because I trusted and appreciated this person. And I was like, you know what? They weren't trying to do anything. We have a inside joke. It's not that deep. He calls me Yusuf sometimes. It's part of an inside joke, and really, it wasn't an inside joke. I was making excuses for this person, and neither he or I learned from that experience. So I went to this small dark space of shame for myself, even though I was the one being harmed, and that person didn't experience anything because no one brought it up to them. People around me wanted to help and have be kind and support me through it, but I rejected it because I instead of addressing it, decided that being in my own space was better. Right. So clearly it has impacted me for several years. And our relationship, me and Liston's relationship, has deteriorated since that date. And I never gave them a chance, so they didn't have a chance because they didn't know. So one of the things that I wanted to also talk about, right, using this example, is that when you're trying to build something as a culture in your team, right? You're always learning, growing, evaluating. So learning, improving, and learning, evaluating, and you do this continuously as a person, as a team, and this is what makes people feel like they're safe to be there, right? Like one of the things, especially specifically in the higher education and the academic side of the house, is that you want to see this kind of approach from a lot of people in your team, right? That makes you feel like you can approach people about things that are concerning or things that are exciting. Both are good things to have. But when we have shame and we build these narratives, we block that learning process. And if you've ever been on a team before, and I have, where they say, we've done this the same way for 20 years is the only way to do it. You know, we were okay with how we did it in 1990. Nothing needs to change. You know for a fact that lots of things have changed in the 20, 26 or 25 years. No, probably 30, right? 1990, 30 years since then. And you just do not feel good entering that space. And I was in a team like that. I obviously left a team like that, and I work here where I feel much more welcome and included. But right, if there a situation happened at work where someone misnamed me, right? That's the examples we're using. I'll be able to approach it here at MSU versus a previous team that I used to work for. So let's talk about shame itself as this is the main driver of this conversation, right? So what is shame? Shame is this primal feeling that we've had since back in the day when we were hunter-gatherer societies to keep us, to protect us, to help us conform to our tribe, village, whatever that small group we used to have uh, a long time ago, and it was useful to us. It was useful then to keep us safe, right? Like to keep the group safe. There's a certain level of expectation that we need to hit, and shame helped us keep us conformed. But it's not very useful to us today. Like it's just like anxiety, where anxiety used to help us a lot to keep us safe, keep us alert, keep us aware of threats around us. Today that manifests as anxiety, and it really is a big barrier for our wellness, right? Shame is an adapted feeling that way too, right? And today it's meant to, it comes from this comparison of perfectionism and fearing that disconnection, and that fear of disconnection, back to my example, right? That's where I was at. I started feeling shame because I didn't want to feel disconnected from this human being, this person that I trusted. And what I should have done is connected with the people around me. That's the connection that was important, right? That I instead I disconnected from the people who cared, and connected with this person, try to keep this connection with the person who continued to cause harm to me. So with shame, we always need to talk about this other related feeling of guilt. And we talk about this in our office does the cultural competency workshops, and we talk about this a lot, right? The role of guilt and shame in our work. The difference between them is the um, where the focus is on this negative feeling, right? Shame talks about you as an entire being being negative or whatever, right? Like that emotion being connected to you completely, versus guilt makes it an actionable thing, right? If instead of saying I'm a bad person for doing this, you the guilt turns into I did something bad and I'm capable of doing something to change, right? So it's kind of actionable instead of making yourself feel smaller, which is what shame does. Guilt opens up the possibility of action, which both are bad feelings to feel. Like I would never want to feel shame or guilt, but I would rather feel guilt because there's an action I can take, right? You just don't want to bulldoze through that feeling though. You want to acknowledge it, right? So you don't want to just bulldoze and just do the wrong thing. You got to acknowledge and evaluate. So let's talk about some best practices to get out of that role of shame and maybe into some action, right? You got to name it. So you have to name it. You have to say what you're feeling. You have to spend some time to reflect. You got to practice some self-compassion and turn that shame into growth, that action part, right? And what it could look like is saying I did something that I'm not proud of. I'm ashamed that this happened, and I want to do something about it because I know I'm capable of better. Right? That self-compassion is there, that action is there, acknowledgement of feeling is there, and that's hard to do. And I'm not saying that's easy. It's not a place that you'll get every single day. It might take some time to do, but as you practice it, it gets better and easy. Right? Especially at work, remembering that each part of our work life and maybe in our personal lives, right? Not every moment is your worst moment. That doesn't define you completely. You're allowed to grow, and you're allowed to have dignity and respect. You're worthy of that. And so part of that self-compassion is learning, yep, I deserve to learn and grow from this, right? I'm not saying you're uh, exempt from the harm maybe you cause in that space, or maybe if you have done something bad, that is excusable in any way. It's saying I am capable of doing something more I'm acknowledging what happened and I'm going to do something about it, right? It helps us come into that action part. Um, and I'll ask you to reflect, right? Like I said, we only have so little time to talk about it today, as we're having a 30-minute lunch here. But I encourage you to reflect on, where have you felt shame before? As the slide says at work, right? But we've spent years in our life feeling shame, and if you haven't, fantastic. That's great, I guess. But right, I'm sure we felt shame before. Let's reflect on how we got from that feeling of shame to where we're now, right? Where that positive feeling, like the positive outcome, came from that shame. That's a good place to start. That's a good place to start. And if you've never felt this feeling before, you can't think of a good example. That's great. That doesn't make you a bad person, right? That just means that you don't have the experience. Just having no experience in this doesn't make you a bad person. It just is telling you that you need to dig into some other people's experiences, learn about the world and other people's experiences through like videos and books, right? So let's look for different experiences, because maybe the reason why you don't have good examples is because there's not enough context that you have. So it doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you that you don't have good context. So let's get some context, let's get some perspective, and maybe we'll learn something along the way. So again, let's go back to this names as an example, right? Names are complicated. Names have pride in them, culturally. So my name is Yasis, and it's very specific to that small island I come from in Sri Lanka. There's no one else in the world that has that name. Well, I would say there's like a handful of people in my own country, millions of people that have my name. So I've always felt quite unique and quite proud of my cultural name. There's ties to family, right? There's pride in taking back your maiden name or claiming a married name. There's so much pride that can come from it, and there's a cultural pride. For example, in Spain and Latin countries, there's a tradition you take the surnames of your mother and father. My daughter is half Puerto Rican, and they have this tradition of very mindful of taking it, because that's part for her, one part of her culture that she will always have, right? She's multiracial, multicultural, multilingual. That's a part of her culture she will always have. That's something prideful we want to indulge in that, right? There's a part of names that are liberating, right? For your personal safety, you might have to choose a different name, but that safety is liberating, right? If those in the queer community, specifically trans folks, they choose names that are liberating for them and their own identity. The reclaiming of a maiden name and claiming a married name, like in the past slide, can be liberating, but also an ancestral name that was taken away, that the violence in the past, just claiming that back again is something that's happening around us, and that is incredibly liberating for you as well. So another fact, 50,000 people a year change their name in the U.S., and I think that's including people who change their name for marriage. But right, it's a huge part of our U.S. culture here. But on the flip side of that coin, there's pain associated with it, and this is why names is a great example for the shameful shame conversation, right? Changing your name for your personal safety, that erasure of yourself is painful. The violent past from ancestral names that were forced upon you through slavery, that is painful. International students, specifically from China, do this a lot, where they adopt a more American name to conform for whatever reason. That's painful to force you to do that. And then lastly, because you have a different name that is not common, you get treated differently. That's painful to see. And my example being that when I used to talk to parents, I would talk to them for an hour about their student, and they would thank me all the time. And at the end, when they would ask me my name, and I'd say it's Yasis, they would go, "Oh," and they turn the phone off. And we'd spend an hour of building good relationships, and then in that last minute, just hearing my name wasn't something they were expecting. The way they ended the call really just like broke that relationship, and I hate that feeling, right? People expect a certain kind of experience. So and here's another fact: 20% of workers have changed their name on resumes because they want to prevent discrimination or bias in their process, right? And at work, specifically academia, we have so many names that come with this, right? Our degrees, we put in our names. The the titles that we have a hierarchy and power over us. And then lastly, as we come into higher education, right? The mascot, right? If you say go green, everyone at MSU goes go white. Where we pick up this name called Spartans, that's new and exciting. That builds a sense of belonging in that sense as well, right? We spend a third of our lives at work. That belonging is a top driver of our success at work. So it is a very important part of it, right? So back to that shame part of it, right? That negative feeling comes from the misnaming and mispronouncing of our name, right? The stress that you can feel, the exclusionary, the self-esteem loss, the reduced performance and disengagement comes from that misnaming, that feeling of not belonging, right? That shame can come to you as well, even though you're the one being harmed. But then over time, right, that person being misnamed can have this mistrust of people and the institution, and those small paper cuts over time hurt a lot, right? You can just blow up one day for this was the smallest thing, because over years this could have been building up, right? It's not their fault. They've just been in the culture like that. So let's talk about how we can intercept that feeling of shame, right? Using this example of names, how do we intercept that feeling before it even happens, right? So we talked about those tips before of getting out of the cycle of shame. Let's just think about uh, things that we do in our workplace where we can uh, build those steps in within our process of how we navigate things at work, right? So, for example, for names specifically, right, like we can repeat their name right away. That repetition in our brain helps our neurons strengthen that connection. You can associate someone with something visual, right? I wear if you've been around me a lot, I wear t-shirts and jeans every single day to work. That's just who I am. Nothing fits my body, but t-shirts and jeans. So if you're like Yasis wears t-shirts and jeans, if that sound makes you remember Yasis t-shirts, jeans, that if that's how you want to remember it, that's great. But I put some better examples down here, right? Sarat with the silver glasses, Ben from budgeting. If that's how you need to remember the alliteration, the rhyming, the connection to symbolism is really uh, powerful in our brains. And along with that symbolism, I used to do this with my student staff because I worked in housing before. You have to remember like 60 names on a floor, maybe more. I would give them the floor plan, and I would tell them to write people's names with symbols that remind them of them, right? Like footballs or the Greek letters, the Greek house. But I used to do this in interviews a lot. When people sit in front of me, I would draw out the room and I would write people's names as they introduce me. Themselves to me. You can do this in meetings however you need to, and it's your own notebook, right? So it's not for anyone else to see. You just make the notes and you have it with yourself, and you can remember those symbols before. And then lastly, don't be afraid to ask that name again, right? Just it's so much better. So it feels a lot better to be asked again what your name is than to get your name butchered, right? Just to say, hey, I'm sorry. Can you remind me of your name again? I'm misremembering that. That feels a lot better than being called Yusuf when your name is Yasis. So, a couple of do's and do nots. It's okay to, ask if you're mispronouncing someone's name. Hey, I feel like I'm mispronouncing your name. Can you help me pronounce it better? I want to do right by you, right? That's showing a level of respect to another person. But do not insist that you know how you're pronouncing your name. This has happened to me before. It's that's how you say it. That I went to Sri Lanka 10 years ago, and that's how the person there said it. It's like I don't care what the person you went to that island for said how my name is pronounced. I'm saying my name is pronounced like this, and that's important to me. Unless you're my best friend who is going to bat for me, you just don't assume that you know how my own name is pronounced. It's my name, not yours. This has happened to me before. Do apologize for mispronouncing, right? If you are aware, just say I'm sorry, and just move forward, right? Pronounce it uh, properly and just move forward. It's not doesn't need to be a whole thing, like oh sorry, yasis, and just move forward. Don't make excuses, and I do this a lot, right? There's lots of folks with the same name or or similar names, and I just have to somehow it makes me feel better to say, why I made the mistake. Right? It does feel good to say like, oh, there's like 16 Jennifers here, and I was mixing this person with that. Keep that in your brain, and no one else needs to know. You can talk to that with your best friend from work, or you can your best friend outside of work. But in that moment, that person doesn't need to know excuses. Make that person feel small. Just apologize, say it properly, move forward. You'll be all right. And then here's some do's you can do, right? And I learned this from the DI office here that I work at currently. We use the software called Name Drop. It's a website, sorry. You can just help people just pronounce your name by putting it out there. Put it on your signature. Just give people tools so that you don't have to have the same conversation a million times. I put my picture on my email signature as well, so people can connect my face to my name. That symbolism, well, I guess it's not a symbol, right? My picture, the imagery of my face with my name helps people remember me better. Makes it also a little bit personal, but also on Teams and email. Just like don't be anonymous blob of letters, right? Like YV. No one can remember all the YVs, but if they remember my face, they're they're easier to connect to personally, right? Strengthening those neural connections, right? So let's talk about best practice. That shame part, right? If you were the one who experienced this misnaming, you need to pause and assess if it's even a safe situation for you to address. Right? If we're talking about the names of folks being misnamed, if President Gatzkowitz uh, said my name wrong, I don't know if I could address it. It's president of the university. I don't know if I have the guts to do that. But the dean of our college said something, misnamed me. He's chill. I can talk to him. I have that kind of relationship with him. That's okay, right? But you have to navigate your own personal safety. Just educate and move forward, right? Like, hey, it's Yasis, Ya, and then Sis. Just the emphasis matters to me, and just educate and move forward. And also just assume good intent. There's lots of good people here at MSU and our college, and just assume that people are trying to do their best out here. Until proven otherwise, I guess, right? If you witness it, be an ally to that person. Ask them, just like my example of the people in my group who came to me, even though I rejected their help, right? They did the right thing by coming to me and asking if they needed, if I needed anything. You can call it in, right? They could have gone to that staff member and said, "Hey, I noticed you did something. You mispronounced Yass's name several times. Just so you know, I don't think he's that much upset about it, but just so you know, that's what happened." That person now has the opportunity to respond. And then I do this sneakily at events a lot. If I don't know people's names or I've forgotten it, or someone tells me, "Oh, what's their name? I've met them 1,000 times. I don't remember their name." I just bring them along, be like, "Hey, have you met Jennifer?" Right? And just even if they know each other, I can be that third party to break the tension. And if you're the person who it causes harm by misnaming, right? It's not about you in that moment. So avoid defensiveness, just listen in, learn, ask how you can improve, and don't make it about yourself. Just, in that moment, that person has taken a big step, and you are there to learn and grow from that as well, right? So you are worthy of that respect as well. So they're respecting you by coming to you to resolve the issue. And then lastly, right, just if this is the 1,000th paper cut you've had with being misnamed, you take some time for yourself, right? You can remove yourself from the situation, get some fresh air. I can cuss someone out if this is the 1,000th time someone said my name wrong, right, or whatever, right? We're using names as an example here, but whatever disrespect that you're feeling here, I just need a break. So you're completely justified in doing that. You can talk to a colleague, your friends, your family, the groups of affinity that you have, or just come to our office in the I office, just to ask for some advice, or we'll just listen, right? Like we don't need to solve something all the time. You can also consider talking to us as an office for some training. If you're noticing that your team need some help, we can assist with that. We have a multitude of trainings. We also, we can just navigate how you can approach a situation as well. We can be your partner. Obviously, depending on the situation, you can report this higher up, right? I obviously, for the small things, I would rather folks just, out of respect, just talk one on one and try and resolve it. But right, if it's ongoing and it's just not resolving itself, or the level of disrespect is just really high, you just got to report it, and that's a decision you got to make. And obviously you don't have to make it by yourself, but we're here to help. But yeah, that it just depends on the situation. So hopefully we've come to the end here. I've got you to think about what are some best tips to remember names, right? If you're an advisor, if you're someone who works with hundreds of students every semester, you're not going to always remember everyone's name, but hopefully some of these tips were useful to you and useful for you not to feel ashamed if you make mistakes or as you misremember names. But also, if you do cause harm to others, hopefully this gave you some tips on how to address that and to navigate it yourself. But also, hopefully, these were tools you can use elsewhere in your work where you feel shame. And I think about the things that we output as people produce things at work. There can be shame related to that as well. But at the end of the day, we all have each other's backs, and that's what I'm hoping that this is trying to show you. And Yeah, we're here. So if you have any feedback, you can obviously scan this QR code and let us know. It also asks for any topics in the future that you want to chat about. But we're pretty early on this situation, so you can leave a couple of minutes early. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to stay behind the call and connect. But thank you for your time today.